Agroecology. It's being presented as a solution by even corporations now, even governments. And I mean, they're talking about organics and agroecological solutions, but of course they're tying them up with innovations, technological innovations, and so on. But there is a whole different agroecology that small-scale food producers, movements, and organizations are talking about. So let's hear from all three of you. What is agroecology? And what are the different articulations of agroecology? Why is it important to us?
I think it's important to say there's a lot of confusion, for example, for organic versus agroecology. And so I'd say that organic food is food simply produced without poisonous chemicals and without GMOs.
Yeah.
Agroecology goes more towards how that food is produced. And I think that it's, we hear a lot that agroecology is the kind of the science that explains how food is produced, both organic and non-organic. It refers to the principles behind the production practices that would allow us to produce organically. And it also has a strong political content and really refers to a grassroots social movement around the world to change our food system. And if we can look at a lot of different kinds of alternative agriculture practices, we can say, why does natural farming work in India? Because it's based on agroecological principles. Agroecology tells us why it works so well. Why does permaculture work? Because it's based on agroecological principles. Agroecology tells us why it works so well. And the same with many other so-called sustainable agriculture practices. We can understand them because they work on the basis of agroecological principles, which really come from the accumulated knowledge of small farmers and indigenous people over thousands, if not millions of years around the world. So, and as I said, has strong political content and has been taken up by social movements like La Via Campesina as a banner of struggle. And it can really unite together many of these different kinds of alternative agriculture movements, because what they're all really talking about, the underlying principles, are agroecological principles.
For us, agroecology is not just a technique, it's our constructive resistance. Agroecology means self-reliance. Agroecology means farming done with self-respect, farming done with dignity, farming done in respect to nature, in harmony with nature. It has to become a social movement. It is a social movement in its own sense. So it's not just it's not just a choice that you make, whether it is chemical farming or organic farming or natural farming or agroecology. So agroecology is a combination of all these ecological farming practices, which rebuilds the dignity of the farming community.
Sorry, just a quick follow-up question to you, because you are from the peasant movement and you are a producer yourself. Is agroecology economically and socially viable? And if so, how?
That's totally wrong in our experience, because we have seen higher yields in agroecological farming. We are practicing natural farming, so there is no difference in terms of yield. We actually see higher yields, and it is definitely economically viable. And it doesn't mean that you have to sell it at an exorbitant price, like the mainstream organic food that feeds just the elite of the society. The farmers themselves should be able to consume their own food. So because we are producers themselves. So, I remember when I was a kid, whenever we visited farms, farmers had so many things to give it to you as gift, as, bananas, papayas, so many things that you would always bring back, to your home. But now farmers have nothing to offer. Farmers who produce just monoculture, sugarcane or sorghum or maize for the feed of the chicken, they have nothing to offer. They just have money. and that money is actually inside the debt trap. And it's when they say that it can just feed the small, the small scale farmers themselves and not the society. So the question is, who is the society? So the farmers constitute the majority of the society. We are producers as well as consumers as well. So it's a very simple, it's a common sense. That's something they need to understand. And is it socially viable? Yes. In terms of, if we are talking about consumers in the urban areas, there is a big demand for the food. There is a growing consumer awareness. We started a collective recently called Namdu, which is a farmers collective, which means ours in our language in Kannada, where agroecological farmers are coming together and creating their own market, and they are doing their own full, value addition of whatever they're growing, and so on. And we are experiencing that there is a growing demand, especially from the consumers sector from the urban areas. So it is definitely what we need to do is to build this to build this bridge between the producers and the consumers, and not allow the middlemen in a very sophisticated dress to come and rule us.
Thank you, Chukki. Professor Manjanelu, over to you.
For me, I would say organic natural farming, when we talk about it, largely limits itself to the production system, basically about the production practices kind of thing. But we actually need to look at as a change at the food system level. So when we talk about agroecology, it's about the food system level. It includes markets, it includes public policy. Unless those two changes, expecting that farmers themselves will change is not going to happen. And my experience comes with nearly working with about 100,000 farmers in India across states. And we have seen that 2 to 4 years, it may take time to understand, adapt kind of thing. But the yield drop or whatever people talk about is not experienced beyond 5%. And not beyond 5%. A lot of evidence is available now compared to earlier. See, unfortunately, the problem is who builds evidence? See, the whole question which is asked by agriculture universities, where is the evidence? It is their responsibility to actually generate evidence.
Yes.
Saying that this doesn't work, at least, even if they want to say this doesn't work, it is their responsibility to generate evidence. Unfortunately, their opinions are passed down as expertise. I would say, very unfortunately, their beliefs and opinions are passed down as expertise. It is not data-based. So today in India, large number of farmers across country are working around shifting towards agroecological approaches. And mind you, that is happening without support from government. I would say there is no input subsidy like it comes for conventional farmers. There is no procurement like it comes from the conventional farmers. In spite of that, farmers are doing it. So if there is a similar kind of support systems extended, if the similar kind of research investments can be made. For example, today, if you look at nearly 90% of the research investments goes on chemical agriculture. So what is the productivity of that? So nobody is actually asking the questions there. So I would say if agroecological framework is fixed for conventional agriculture also, measure on the same framework. What is your output compared to the inputs you are using? What is the impact on climate, impact on environment, impact on natural resources? What is the net income? Ask the same questions. Putting so much investments on, say, GM research, what is the output of that? Ask the same questions. Put the same amount of support on agroecological approaches. Certainly, systems changes. And till now, large experiences in India are on the production side. I would say large experiences across the country are on the production side. Not much on the innovations on market, not much on the public policy side. I think these two innovations can help for agroecology to further spread, I would say. I would say the time has come for a transition. I think there is no second thought about it, and governments are also talking about it. But the question is whether that transition is going to help small and marginal farmers who are struggling today is the issue. It could be a big market for organic natural farming may happen. Government support also may come in, but whether that comes to the small and marginal farmers is the question. I think that's what we need to be worried about and then work towards that. And the government of India has today two large programs, one on Paramparagat Krishi Vikas Yojana and another is about the National Farming Mission. So both are putting in a lot of support, but at the same time, like someone was mentioning, politics came in terms of looking at small variances and then dividing, like saying organic and natural are different, and then moving towards natural is also associated with cow-based agriculture. So bringing in religion and several belief systems into this framework also is creating an issue. Otherwise, there is a transition mood, I would say, set over there. Also very important, not much talked about in the discussion today, is also about organizing farmers, particularly when they are small and marginal. Collectivizing them is very, very critical. So collectivizing them into cooperatives, farmer producer organizations, linking them to markets is something which is very, very important. So we need to also look at from that dimension. So how do we create that ecosystem? New ecosystem is something which is important. Ecosystem includes labor, it includes consumers, it includes markets, it includes policies. I think that's what I would say can help. And I see a hope that there is a transition is possible. If small differences which people has can be kept aside, and if we can have more of a dialogue like this and understand each other's perspectives, we can respect each other and then take it forward, rather than actually trying to fight over the differences, small differences, and then actually giving more space for the opposite side. I think it's better to work together. I certainly would look for that. So collectivization, I would say, not only at the farmers level, collectivization at the organizations, institutions, movements. I think that's where solution lies.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Peter, over to you. And in your response, I would like you to also touch on what are the polyeconomic and other systemic supports that are needed to expand agroecology, since you have been looking at agroecology globally in different regions, no? Thanks.
What can consumers do in areas where there are not a lot of farmers markets? I can say from my home city in Mexico, we were in that situation. And a group of about 150 families who wanted to have access to small farmer healthy food grouped together and basically formed a consumer cooperative, and then went out and visited farmer villages within a certain distance and found actually quite a few farmer families who are already producing ecologically and who are more than happy to have a new market opportunity. So I think these kind of things we often hear about starting from the peasant social movement, but I think that it can go both ways. It can also be started by urban social movement who enter into contact with peasant organizations and cooperatives and villages and communities. On the issue of model farms, I would not really be in favor of establishing a model farm in every village, but rather of having something like a roster of farmer families who are successfully farming in an agroecological way and who are open to receive visits from others who want to solve problems or learn solutions from them. We call this the farmer to farmer or peasant to peasant method, because what we find with model farms is that farmers don't really believe them because they're clearly subsidized, they're unrealistic typically for the reality of other farmers, but nothing is more realistic for a farmer than another farmer just like she or just like he. And therefore, a principle of these kind of farmer to farmer processes is that they shouldn't be paid to do it. It should be families who are successful because they're farming agroecologically and who are typically more than happy to receive visits. It gives them a boost to their own pride and self-esteem. And we've seen farmer organizations themselves identify these families within their social base and their membership and create these kinds of exchange and learning opportunities. Now, on the public policy side and on the organic state side, I think Chucky mentioned something very important, which is that when we talk about agroecology, we're talking about the peasant and small farmer movement, and we're not talking about corporate organic for elite consumers in luxury supermarket shelves. And the problem is that, and I'm sure this is not the case of what Mr. Patel is suggesting in Karnataka, but what we've seen with many governments at the provincial and national level around the world is when they come into agroecology, they see it as a way to establish even more corporate partnerships than they had before, and public funds for even more subsidies to corporate agribusiness for corporate large-scale monocultures of so-called organic, which continue to displace peasants and can continue the corporate concentration of the food system. So I think it's very important to think outside that corporate box, and how can public policy support small farmer agroecology? And you know, maybe I'm very curious about, for example, the case in Andhra Pradesh, a nearby state, where I know that there is at least the intention to do it differently. I've seen some criticism of Sikkim for being a little bit too top down in their desire to be an organic state. So I think we have to look at these public policy examples around the world and see what kind of public policies can really help to reshape and restructure the food system in a way that supports small farmers and their organizations. And I think that organization is the key word, and we need to see public subsidies that are currently going to corporate agriculture to go to small farmer and peasant organizations for their own processes, for their own peasant agroecology schools, for their own farmer-to-farmer exchange networks. And another thing that I think is very important is for governments at the state, local, municipal, village level to provide public support for marketplaces, for peasant markets where without corrupt mafias controlling them, where small farmer organizations and families and villagers can sell their ecological products. And I think that's one public policy that's really important and needs to be done a lot more. We see tax breaks and tax credits for supermarket construction, but why don't we see governments networks of farmer markets?
Yes, I totally agree with Peter on setting up model farms. So model farms don't really work. So it's the farmer to farmer knowledge sharing and experience sharing is the way. And that's exactly what we are also following, learning from the experience from Cuba. Recently at Mysore, during the Asha Sammelan, the Kisan Swaraj Sammelan, the Karnataka delegation met separately, and we have decided to organize a Karnataka state level, gathering of organic natural farmers and agroecological farmers in the month of February. And Mr. Mahima Patel has taken the initiative of organizing it in the central part of Karnataka. So this is a small piece of information to all those who are attending this. And as concluding remarks, I think if not the corporations, at least the peasants have experienced, and climate change is actually pushing the small scale food producers to go for agroecological method of farming. And it's what is important is to fill the gaps in terms of research. We don't have University of Agricultural Sciences with us, with the social movements, with the farmers movements in support of agroecology. So we have to build alliances to build evidences. So Dr. Ramanjan Nelu was right. It is their responsibility to do it, but they have neither interest nor the conviction to do it. And just to give you an example, in Karnataka, when after pushing so much, the government of Karnataka, when Mr. H.D. Kumaraswamy was in the government, they invited the chief officer of Andhra Pradesh, Mr. Vijay Kumar, to learn from him. And then they released some 50 crore rupees, basically to all the agriculture universities to test agroecology. So this is how our universities, our governments are thinking. And finally, they came up with a report after just 2 years that agroecology doesn't work. So this is this is the line of our universities and our governments. So it shows how important the role of the social movements and the friendly NGOs or the researchers become. So we all have to come together and strengthen this fight for agroecology. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yuki. But I will ask you for one last, I will, to give us one last message. Most people in this meeting today, this dialogue today, most of us are not farmers. Most of us are not peasant producers, but I think people who have joined today are genuinely committed towards building, towards changing structurally and systemically, the system that are governing us. So what message would you like to give us that we can then give to others in terms of building social support and public support for agroecology and small-scale food production?
Well, food is something that connects producers and consumers. And food, it's not just a source of nutrition, but it is also an emotional, factor that connects us. So when we want to build friendship, we invite people over dinner.
Yes.
So isn't it? So we have to connect consumers through food. And yes, they are rightly in support of healthy food. They are rightly in support of farmers. So we have seen, consumers coming all the way from Bangalore to buy directly from the farmers. So there are a lot of awareness, but we have to organize them. We are not doing that work. We request the consumers, like our friend in Delhi, to take initiative in organizing their own communities. In urban areas, they live in this kind of big buildings. So there are 1,000, 2,000 families live together. They have a community gym, they have a community swimming pool, they have community, etc., tennis court. Why can't they have a community farmers market? So somebody was asking me, when we were talking about direct marketing, is it a B2B model, business to business model? I said, this is a C2C model. This is a community to community model. So we have to also start working with few consumers, and at least, from there, they should take it forward and build different community markets.